Great. Okay. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Grimsby, which is in between Hamilton and St. Catharines.
Okay. Do you have both of your parents?
Yeah, both my parents are still together. My dad was my stepdad, and I found that out at 13. I didn't know until I was 13 he was my stepdad. I thought he was my biological dad until then. And then shortly after that, me and him butted heads so much that he ended up kicking me out. So at 13, I was on the street, living in St. Catharines, and struggling to try and make ends meet and figure out what I was going to do with my life. So
How do you describe your childhood before 13?
it was rough. I didn't realize it then, but I used to get the belt when I was punished all the time. So I thought it was something normal, but it was physical abuse. And when I had kids, it wasn't something that we practiced. Right? We used to use other means of discipline for the kids rather than corporal punishment and beating them. But when I grew up, my parents, like my mom was a nurse and my dad worked for the government, and everything seemed normal to us, right? My parents were both together. They stayed together. They're still together. So it was fairly normal.
Okay. When you turned 13, yeah, tell me.
My mom sat me down one day because the neighbor found out that my dad was not my biological dad, and she didn't want me to find out any other way. So she sat me down and told me that he wasn't really my father, and that was hard for me at that time because I was 13 and everything was changing in my life, and I struggled with that. So we ended up butting heads quite a bit until it got to the point where he just kicked me out, and then I lived on the street after that.
Yeah. Do you want to share when your mom told you what is the whole story?
She basically told me that she got pregnant when she was 18 and had me, and she thought she was in love with the guy that was my biological father, but she wasn't, and he ended up splitting up with her before he knew she was pregnant. And then when he found out, he asked her to get married, and she said no, and he went on his way and moved out west, and she didn't want to really tell me anything about him. She told me that she didn't know where he was or who he was, and that was it.
Okay.
So
Yeah. So what happened when you were 13 on the street?
well, I moved to St. Catharines, and instead of going to the system and going into a group home and being part of Children's Aid, I started doing other things to try and make money to make ends meet to live, like selling weed, and I started smoking weed and getting into drugs and everything else, and that was how I supported myself for a long time until I was 18, and then I got into construction, which was good because I learned how to do wood framing and drywall, and that was good for me because I ended up opening my own business and having a couple more kids with my girlfriend, and I did well with that for a long time, and then.
Tell me more about 13 to 18.
13 to 18, I lived on the streets in St. Catharines, and I had grown up in a smaller community. Like Grimsby was a small town. So moving to St. Catharines was a big change because it was a city. It was more like a big city. People were a lot different. There was a lot more crime, a lot more drugs, a lot more kids on the street. So it was more accepted for kids to be out on the street late at night and hanging out around donut shops and restaurants like McDonald's and stuff. And I used to ride skateboards, so I'd skateboard in the parking lot, and we'd be drinking underage and smoking pot and getting high. And it was what I thought I was having fun. Right, I was growing up.
When is the first time you try heavy drugs?
Heavy drugs was closer to when I was 18, 19 years old.
Okay. Before you only do weed.
Weed, yeah.
Okay.
Up until then, it was just weed, and I did acid through high school and stuff. Psychedelic stuff. Just weekends we'd party and drop acid or take mushrooms or whatever. And then when I was 18, 19 years old, the guy that I was selling weed for started getting me to sell coke for him. And then I started using the coke too, and it started just little bits at a time. And of course, it's very addictive, so it got heavier and heavier, and to the point where I had to do it, sell it to support my habit.
Do you still remember when the first time you used Coke? What is that feeling?
It was a feeling of invincibility. Like I felt like I used to play pool in a league, and I do a couple lines of coke with my buddies, and I could shoot pool better. I could do everything better. I felt like so.
Focus.
Yeah, I felt like it was something that was helping me do things better. And then it went from just doing lines of coke to I was selling it to people, and they were smoking crack, and then I started smoking crack, and that was. At the time, I thought better because it wasn't stuffing up my nose, and I could breathe, and I could fall asleep better. But it ended up being so highly addictive that within a few weeks of trying it, I was addicted heavy. So it was, I ended up losing my job, and my girlfriend that I was with ended up leaving me with my daughter, and that was hard for me because. I thought we were going to be together for a long time, and I was going to raise my daughter with her, and she didn't do drugs like that, so she didn't like the fact that I was doing drugs, and she left. So that was hard for me to handle, and it ended up pushing me further into doing drugs because it was something that I was using as a coping mechanism to kind of mask what was happening, right? Hiding the fact and hiding the feelings that I was having was easy when I did coke because it just made me feel better, right? It made me feel good.
Yeah.
But it was something that was sucking my life away because I was spending all of my time and energy getting it.
Yeah.
And it was just it was a bad thing.
Yeah. Do you want to just share a little bit about the prison part?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't actually go to jail at all until I was in my 40s. I had split up with my ex. We had I had one child with one girl, and she left because of the coke use. And then I got together with another girl who had children, and we had 2 kids together as well. So we had 4 kids. I was doing drywall, making lots of money, and I was using coke on the side and trying to hide it and everything else. And then when we split up, I was in my 30s. We split up, and I ended up having my children with me and having care of my kids, and she had her kids with her. And then she came to visit a couple times, and she knew where I was living, and I went on a fishing trip, and she broke into my house and I had my firearms licenses, and she stole my guns and sold them to her drug dealer. And then the police found her drug dealer with one of my guns registered to me, and they charged me with trafficking firearms. So I sat in jail for 6 months, and I went to trial. And when I went to trial, the judge saw the actual situation that was occurring, and she said, like, this guy's been working his whole life. He's not done anything wrong up until now, and now all of a sudden he's just going to start trafficking firearms. And she saw the situation, and she saw the pictures, and she saw what had happened, so she acquitted me and said I was not guilty, and then I got out. But when I got out, they weren't letting me see my kids, and I was in heavy depression at that time, so I started using drugs more heavily. And then I hurt myself at work. I had gone back to work, and I fell and shattered my shoulder. So like I was saying earlier, I was prescribed opiates, and my doctor cut me off the opiates because he said I was using the opiates with cocaine and it was dangerous. So that left me in a situation where I was in heavy pain and I needed some sort of pain relief. So I went to the street for it, and the only thing I could find at that time was the fentanyl. So that became an issue where I was using fentanyl for pain relief. And it was so expensive that the only way for me to afford it was to sell it. And it seemed like that was a reoccurring thing. Every time I would get into a drug, the only way for me to afford anything was to try and sell it to try and make money. But then, you'd end up behind in debt and people after you and everything else. So I ended up going to detoxing for a bit, and then getting onto the Suboxone program, and staying away from the heavy opiates because you just can't control it.
Yeah.
It's something that spirals way too far out of control.
Yeah. So, what the feelings fentanyl different to coke or crack?
Very much so. Fentanyl is a downer, and coke is an upper. Like coke picks you up and makes you feel on top of the world and invincible, whereas the fentanyl is an opiate. It's a downer. It brings you down. It makes you tired. It makes you sleepy. But it was more for the pain that I was using it at first. Until I had been using it so much that if I didn't use it, I would physically become sick. So I would be throwing up or I'd have diarrhea, and in order to stop that, you would have to use.
Yeah.
And the only thing that would get you out of that was I went to the clinic for the addictions, and they got me on Suboxone.
Yeah.
So that kind of saved me from using the fentanyl. And the fentanyl was just like a heavy heroin.
Yeah.
You know, so anybody that's ever had a heroin addiction knows what the fentanyl is like, because it's like heroin only times 100.
Heroin also bring you down, right?
Yeah, same thing. It's a downer.
Okay. Tell me more about the prison. When the first time you go to the prison for the 6 months,
Yeah.
how do you feel?
It was terrible. I was
Like?
panicking. Like I had no family around, no friends to bail me out, so I couldn't get bail. I got stuck in jail with, criminals all around me. It was scary. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. So I tried to make friends with people. Right? You make friends with people in prison. You're making friends with the wrong people, because they're all criminals.
Yeah.
But you're living there, so you have no choice but to try and get along with them. So.
Tell me more. When the first day you got there, how do you feel? What do you say?
Oh, it was just horrible. The first day I was there, I was scared. I didn't know what to think or what to do. But where I was in Sudbury, so it's a smaller town. A lot of the guys, they ask you questions, who you are and what your situation is, and as long as you're not a pedophile or somebody who's a bad person, they accept you and they bring you in and they'll talk to you. And then a lot of stuff that happens in jail is like there's a lot of contraband that comes in cigarettes, and you make deals with guys for cigarettes, and it's kind of it's almost like being in camp, but very harsh, very hardcore,
Okay. Tell me more.
But when I first got there, I was scared. I was, like I said, I'm not an aggressive, violent guy, so being in jail, I didn't know what to do. I was scared. I didn't know if I was going to get beat up or what was going to happen to me. And I ended up having some problems with some guys, and I did get jumped after a little while of being there. 4 guys jumped me, and they beat me pretty bad. I ended up in the hospital. I had to have my face reconstructed, and I had a broken arm, and I had a cast. It was bad.
Why did they do that?
There was a jail guard there that thought I was somebody different, thought I was sleeping with his wife, which I wasn't. So he set me up on a range and told them that I was a child molester. So these guys jumped me, and they realized later on what had really happened. But some of these guards are pretty corrupt. They have power that over people. They basically have power over your life. They can do to you whatever they want and get away with it, because it's your word against theirs. And to anybody that you're talking to, you're a criminal and they're a jail guard. So the inmates don't have any rights, basically. They have they control everything you do. They control your meals. They control your day-to-day everything. Whether you can shower, whether you can shave, whether they give you a toothbrush and toothpaste, they can keep back from you, or they can give to you. It's bad.
You went to the hospital. Then when you got out of the hospital, there's nothing happened to the guard.
No.
Okay.
No, nothing happened. The guard, I didn't know at the time what had happened. I found out later on what had happened, because the guys that had done it came and talked to me after I was out of jail. They came to me on the street and they said, "This is what happened. This guard came to us and told us this is who you were." And so we did what we did. Like, they jumped me because they thought I was a pedophile. Mm-hmm. And then they found out later who I was from other people, so they apologized to me and stuff. But I mean, once something like that happens, that trauma, it's traumatic. You know what I mean? It's a scary thing. You go to jail, and the first thing you think is you're gonna get attacked, right? So it was pretty bad. And when I got out of jail, I had nowhere to go and nothing. So I went back to selling drugs again, to try and support myself and feed myself. And trying to sell them and have them on me without doing them, it's something I can't do. So I got back into doing drugs again, and then I got arrested for selling drugs. And when I went to court in front of the judge, I basically told him my situation and my story, and he said, I'm going to give you a break because you don't seem like some of the guys that I see most of the time. You seem like you've been a hard-working guy your whole life, and you fell into a bad situation, and I'm going to give you a break. I'm gonna give you time served and let you try and get your life back. And I have. I got out of jail then, and I haven't been back since. Actually, I did go back for about a month for a breach that happened during COVID. I couldn't report because I was in Niagara, and I had to report in Sudbury, and there was nobody to report to, so I ended up with a breach charge, and I did 20 days for it, and then I got out. So,
Yeah.
but that was fine. I just did 20 days in segregation just by myself, 20 days, and then I was free to go.
Yeah. Tell me about the face tattoo.
Actually, the face tattoos, my girlfriend likes face tattoos, so I had gotten the one originally, and then my daughter had just turned 18 this year, and she got a tattoo kit, so she did this tattoo for me. It was the first tattoo she ever did on another person. So,
Okay, what about this one?
and this one here is, I'm Irish, so I got that one when I got this one.
Okay, yeah, all recently.
Yeah, within the last couple of years.
Okay.
It seems that lately a lot more people are getting face tattoos, so it's something that people are more accepting of. And my girlfriend really liked them, so I went and I got it done, and she didn't know I was going. And then I came back, and she seen them, and she was like, "Oh my God!" At first, but then she likes them. She likes the face tattoo thing, and I think it's something that I'm kind of making a statement and telling people, I'm not normal. I'm not. You're a normal everyday person, so it's something that shows people right off the bat that I'm different, and I'm not mainstream type of person.
Yeah.
So that gives them a read on me before I even start talking to them,
Yeah.
which is sometimes not good.
So what bring you to Barrie?
Actually, we were living in St. Catharines, and we were coming back up to Sudbury to take care of the breach charge that I had, and we were on the GO train, and the GO train came as far as Barrie, and it stopped here, and we didn't have money, so we ended up staying in Barrie, and we liked it here. So we talked about whether we were going to go back to Sudbury or not, and I'm still dealing with a breach, so I'm going to court and figuring that out, and then. We kind of like it here, so we're going to try and stay. And we've met some decent people that we get along with, and
Yeah.
it's been good here.
It's how long you stayed here?
We've been here since March. I was gone for a month for the breach that I did, and then I came back, and so we've been here for a few months.
Okay. So how's your life so far?
So far here, it's been good. I find the people here are a lot more accepting of your situations. People don't judge you as much as they do in other cities. Everybody likes to get along, and that's something that I enjoy about Barrie. The people that we've met have been pretty decent people. We've been lucky with some of the people we've met. They've been very helpful with a lot of things for us. Like our neighbors here have been helpful with trying to help build things and telling us what we can do and what we can't do, and it's been good.
Okay. So, are there any plans for the future?
Right now, I want to try and get through court, get through the winter, and try and get my cabin prepared for winter, get it insulated, and get it finished so that we have somewhere warm and comfortable for the winter. I want to try and stay away from the shelters. I find there's a lot of bad things at the shelters, a lot of bad people at the shelters. So,
What do you mean about that?
there are a lot of drug dealers, a lot of people trying to push things on you, a lot of people that are in and out of jail, so there's a lot of crime that happens, and they try and bring you in on it with them. Here, we're away from everybody. We kind of can do our own thing and live our own life without being pushed into things by people.
Yeah.
I'm very easily persuaded to do things.
Yeah.
Somebody tells me something that sounds like it's a good idea, and I'll get right into it, and then it ends up being a bad idea, and I end up suffering for it.
Okay. When you look back to your whole life, so what do you learn?
Um, my whole life, I learned that people judge you based on what they see you first off, and if you don't have something to offer right off the bat, then people don't want to give you the time of day. So you always have to have something to offer right away. So I try and bring something to the table when I meet people right away. You know what I mean? Something that's positive influence or a positive attribute so that I can offer to somebody. Like with my neighbor Gord, he doesn't really like a lot of people, doesn't talk to a lot of people, and when we met, he saw a lot of me and a lot of himself in me. I'm younger than he is, but he sees my hard work and the way I'm dedicated. Like when I started building my cabin, I hadn't done it in a day, and he came over and started to help, and that's not something normal of him. So, hard work and dedication for me is something that I find pays off the most. When I was younger, I didn't really push myself like that. I just went with the flow and tried to do as little as possible because I was more consumed in my everyday life. But you can't base your life on other people. You have to do for yourself, right? Because like both of my children's mothers both left me because they wanted something different. So if I had been doing more for myself than I was putting into them, I probably would have been in a better situation.
Yeah. Are you able to see your kids right now?
Yeah. I see my daughter and my son in Sudbury. I haven't seen them in a couple months, but I talk to them on the phone. So
Yeah. Erin told me you guys want to still go back to up north, right?
yeah, we plan to go back up to Sudbury once my court's finished. We're hoping to go back up there anyway. For a little bit. I don't really know if I want to stay in Sudbury because I got a lot of bad history in Sudbury. A lot of bad things have happened in Sudbury. So eventually I want to try and be out west in BC.
Okay.
And she's got the same idea, but she wants to go back to Sudbury too because her family's there. So she needs to see them and spend some time with them too.
Didn't plan to stay here for a long time?
We didn't, no, but we may stay for a little longer than we thought.
Yeah. The first thing is
Initially.
through the winter, right?
Yeah. Originally we were going to stay just for a month until court, and then court got put over, and now it's getting closer to the winter time. So we need to prepare for being here for the winter just in case we are. So
Yeah.
I think we're probably going to end up being here for the winter and maybe head back up to Sudbury next spring.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the story.
No problem. Thank you.